Well, hello everybody. Good afternoon. Um, I've got my camera set up a little bit differently today because we're going to be adding colour onto our projects, and really, it's the most important thing for you to see is what I'm doing and how the colours are going on, rather than looking at me, to be honest. So I thought we'll have this camera, and then from time to time I'm going to be changing what you can see, so you can see nice and close up as the colours are going on. Okay, just before I start actually adding colour, I wanted to talk about a couple of offers that we've got on, that if you're following a project like this or doing any other project, might be of interest to you. So this project, what have we used? Rice paper. And if you remember, I said that I'd added the rice paper with some Easy Coat matte. So this month, until the end of this month, we have a very special offer on the website. These are just some rice papers that I've grabbed, but if you buy 3 of our lovely rice papers, there's loads and loads of designs to choose from, you are getting one of these Easy Coat matte. There's 50 mils in there, so that's enough to have a good try and see how you get on with it. So that's really worth an offer worth having. Just put those to one side. So that is how I applied this lovely face, this little girl's face on here, was with the Easy Coat matte and the rice paper. And then if you watched any of the other lives, I added this beautiful crackle effect using Ivory Powertex and Easy 3D Flex. So there you've got the smallest size of Easy 3D Flex. Comes in, this is 250 grams. There's a kilo, and then there's a great big one once you're completely addicted to creating crackles. And I used Ivory Powertex for that. I like to use ivory or white, because then whatever colours you put on top, you can really show up the cracks, and your bistre will soak into it nicely. You get really good effects by using either ivory or white. I'm pretty sure it was ivory that I used here. And then I showed you how I used Ivory Powertex again, different fabrics, different textures, and some of these lovely flowers, to add a lot of interest down this bottom part of the canvas. Okay, so don't forget, you get your Easy Coat matte if you buy 3 of the rice papers. Now I'm going to start and apply some colour. First of all, I'm going to apply some colour onto the fabric part, and then we'll start and work on the top. On the fabric part, I'm going to use pigments and varnish, and that brings me on to the next offer that's on the website. I'm just pointing these out because they're not actually shown on the website. It's just something that we've been sending emails out to tell everyone about, and posting on Facebook and Instagram about, because it's something that we're going to, if you order 3 rice papers, you get your Easy Coat matte. If you order 3 pigments, any 3 pigments, you get one of these lovely little varnishes. So they're all really good things, but you won't know about them unless I tell you about them. So that's what I'm going to use down the bottom here, and then on the top here, on the Easy 3D, on the crackles, I am going to use some wax and pigments. I like the finish that gives you, on the Easy 3D. I'm going to use a combination of the two on the flowers, because remember, all of the Powertex products and Secret Art Loft products all work really well together, so I can put some pigments on here, and then when I've done my wax and pigments here, I can bring a little bit of the wax on top of the pigments. So let's get started. I've got some Secret Art Loft colours here. I'm still going to keep this in soft and gentle tones, quite neutral. I want this to be a little bit of vintage looking, a bit shabby chic looking. So I don't want to go too strong with the colours, but I do want to add just a very soft tone of colour in there. So I'm thinking about what colours I've got in the image, and this golden olive is a beautiful colour. You'll see I'm going to use it next. I've got some limoncello gold. I'm not actually sure whether I'm going to use that yet, but if I feel it needs a little bit of a brighter gold, I will add some of that on. And then we have the Tequila Sunrise. That's just going to give it a little bit warmer glow, like the little girl's cheeks and her lips. So I'll add a little bit of that in there. I don't know about you, but I'm trying not to use paper towels and things at the moment. So I've got a muslin here, one of my grandson's old muslins, that I'm using to wipe off my brush. A little bit of varnish at a time, okay? Only need a little bit at a time. And then I'm going to start with the golden olive. Pick up a little bit of varnish, dip into your pigment, and mix that on whatever you're using as your palette. I've experimented with this because I want to try and show you the colour as best I can, and so I've been trying to find the best way to do that on a Facebook Live. Mr. Facebook doesn't do us any favours for giving you a high quality image, but we have to be thankful that we can use it at all. So I'm going to just move this closer to me, and I'm going to change what you can see so that you can see exactly what I'm doing here. There we go. So my brush nice and flat, and I'm just going to catch the surface there very lightly, and I'm adding a little bit of that gold onto there, green gold. These Secret Art Loft pigments, I named them all after cocktails or something like a cocktail. So golden olive, this one's called. Hopefully you can see how that really adds something to my piece. I do love the dry brushing. When it gets to this part, you know you're nearly there. But for lots of people, this is when they get a little bit scared because they think, oh, they're going to ruin it by adding the wrong colour or whatever. Don't be afraid, because if you don't like the colour, just layer another colour over the top and keep going until you do like the colour. You will find that it will just keep developing. Okay, I think you can see that. We'll go back to the other camera because you can get more of a general view from there. I'm going to mix up a little bit more of that pigment. just here on my plate. Wipe off a little bit. Keep going over here. There we go. Now, colouring on ivory and the lighter coloured fabric hardeners, the Powertex medium, when you come to add colour, it can be a bit tricky. If you add blues and reds, it can just end up looking quite dirty. I find that adding metallics for your dry brushing probably works the best, in my opinion, of course. That's just in my opinion. Just get a little bit more of that golden olive. Fabulous colour that is. So there we go. Got a little bit of that all over there. You see, I've left my flowers at the moment, just sort of deciding now I've got that much done. Let me turn it round and have a look. Do I want to add some green onto my flowers? Well, I've got the leaves here. So you can see, you know, you don't have to plan the whole project. You don't have to think about everything that you're going to do beforehand. I certainly don't. I love the way things develop as you go along. Far more exciting than having an absolute finished picture. I don't know about you, but if I do that, I always end up a little bit disappointed because you can't quite create what your imagination can see. So, and then when you've done it, you sort of, oh, well, yeah, it's okay. So, try not to think it through too much. Have a general idea. Maybe an idea of the colours that you want to end up with, but don't plan it too much. It's much more fun, much more exciting. Is that okay? I'm going to change you back round so you can see that again as a close-up. Can you see how that works to really add some lovely colour to it. I find if you add matte colours at this stage, they just tend to make the whole thing start to look a bit grubby. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, I don't know, but I prefer doing it like this. It's the way I've found works, so that's the way I carry on. So I'll add a bit of colour onto these flowers now. I think that's the perfect place to use some of this lovely tequila sunrise cocktail colour again. Fabulous colour. So I'm not mixing very much up at a time. I didn't wash my brush in between either, you notice, because I'm not worried if there's a very slight background tone of that green olive. Just wipe off the excess so I don't get too much on in one go. Little bit at a time. I don't want to overdo this at this stage. You can always add more. You see how that's layering up nicely. Now if you remember, we put brown Vista over the ivory fabric. Once I'd finished dipping my fabric in and it was dry, I sprayed brown Vista over it. That really gives it that lovely depth of colour in the texture, and that's why when we add this colour on now, you've still got that vintage feel to it. Let's go back to the whole picture, and I think you can probably see better as to what I'm doing. A little bit more varnish. Don't forget, you get one of these little varnish free if you order 3 pigments, 3 of any pigment. Dip into my tequila sunrise pigment. And then I'm going to wipe off a little bit. Let's have a bit of that on this lovely butterfly. If you remember when I was doing the fabric sculpting, I said that these flowers and the butterfly are not natural fibres, so despite the fact that the Powertex will stiffen it, it won't make it weatherproof, and it may not fully harden it. Now on the flowers, these are pretty hard, but this butterfly still has a little bit of flexibility in it. For a mixed media piece, it's not a problem at all, but if you were going to put something outside, it's worth bearing in mind. Just sharing that with you, so that you know that for the future when you're choosing elements to add into your work. You know, it may be fine outside, but you can't guarantee it, because the hardener can't fully absorb into the fibres when it's synthetic. There is that risk there. I can dry brush forever, because just keep going around adding a little bit more here, adding a little bit more there. Now I want to bring this together a little bit, so I'm going to take some of my tequila onto the golden olive part as well. I'm going to cover the whole of the golden olive up, but I'm just going to add a little here and there just to bring the whole thing together. I don't want it to feel too disjointed. It's quite dry, this paint now, which is good. You don't want it too wet. When you're mixing your paint, you always want a dryish paint. You get a better effect that way, and it can stop you putting too much on in one go. You know, if you've done a lot of dry brushing, you may feel like being adventurous and just going for it, but I have done a lot of dry brushing, and I still would rather add a little bit at a time and build it up. It takes a bit longer, but I personally feel that I get a better finish that way. So here we go. Let me swap round again to the other camera, because you might be able to see better what I've done there. I'll hold this up for you. And you see just a little bit of that tequila sunrise on those edges has helped me bring the whole thing together. So let me put that back down again. Go back over here. I'm going to go with a little bit of this limoncello gold. Bit of varnish again. Dip into my gold. Be mean with myself. Not got much in that one. You can see that's one of my favourites, the limoncello. It's almost empty. Wipe off. And again, just pick out a few little places. Just all adds interest, and the different shades and tones of colour. We're working in a very similar colour family, if you like. Nothing too contrasting, so I know that they'll all work together quite nicely. Nothing's going to clash and make any real problems with it. Make a bit of gold on there. So the next part that we want to do is I want to add a little bit of colour onto my flowers. Sorry, I can just keep playing there. I'm going to move this round, turn it round for you. And here we have the flowers. I know she's upside down, but at least you can see this part that I'm working on. I've got the same colours again that I'm going to add on to these flowers. If I was just working on my own, I'd probably just do all this together, but I'm trying to make this so that you can see what's going on all the way through. So a bit of golden olive. Now these flowers I created using some of our flower moulds and some stone art powder mixed with my ivory Powertex again. Created the clay, put that in my moulds, and I've stuck them on with ivory Powertex, and then when I sprayed with Vista I sprayed over those as well. And I dry brushed them with ivory Powertex the same as I did this crackle here. Brush nice and flat. Just go over with a little bit of this colour. But you can see that. I'll just take you here so that you can really see how that goes on. Beautiful. They really are beautiful, these flowers. The detail on them is amazing. And just dry brushing over them, you can add so much character and just bring out everything that's there. The stone art clay isn't as smooth and perfect as an air dry or a hearty soft clay, but I actually prefer it because of that, because I like the texture and the character that it gives to these flowers rather than a perfectly smooth finish. A little bit of tequila sunrise. Just mix that up, wipe off a bit. Now I can just add this onto my flowers. See how that just brings out. Sorry, I'm not concentrating here. Getting completely carried away. See how that brings out that flower. I don't know about you, but I just love it. I just love what that does. It's stunning. Absolutely stunning. But again, because I'm using the same colours as I did at the bottom, as I did down here, you'll see that the whole project will work really well together. Going, adding a little bit of each colour. Now, on these flowers, I want to add a little bit of purple. So, what we've got here, Violet Valentine. Dip in with your varnish on your brush. I've got my bit of Violet Valentine. See, I'm making it such a tiny amount. These pigments go so far. I notice again I didn't wash my brush in between, and just a tiny bit of that on here adds lots and lots of beautiful colour, soft tones. Again, notice I'm using the pearls because I just happen to think they work really well. And this lovely daisy here. Now the daisy moulds and the pansies, they're the ones I've used here. They actually come with the leaves, with the set of leaves in the pack. I haven't put them on here, but they're great to have if you're making a project. Be able to put some leaves in there. Okay, so lovely soft colours, but in the same colour tones as we've been using. I'm going to, while I've got that Violet Valentine, excuse me a moment, I'm going to turn that round and just going to mix up a teeny little bit more, and I think I'm going to add a bit onto my butterfly just to bring a little bit of that colour down the bottom here. Just a little bit. Now you could be very precise, you could get a real fine detailing brush and pick out the markings on this butterfly if you wanted to. I'm happy for it to be fairly random. I'm going to have a little bit of lilac on some of these flowers, not on all of them. There we go, that'll do. Alright, so what's next? We want to add some colour now. Let me go back to the bigger camera. We want to add some colour now to this top section where I've got my crackles. So I'm going to use some wax for that, just because I like the way the wax blends into here. I'm pretty pleased with the rest of that though. It's looking pretty good. So let me mix up some wax. Always put your brush in water because the Easy Varnish dries quite quickly and it will ruin your brushes. I'm going to turn this round like that because I want to be getting to this part here. And I have some Powerwax here. It's water-based. The water-based wax works brilliantly with the pigments. So I'm just going to use the end of my brush because I want to scoop a little bit of that out onto my plate that I'm using for my mixing. Can't really call it a palette, can I, when it's quite obviously a plate. And then wipe that off there. Got to decide what I'm going to do colour-wise here. I'm going to stick with my golden olive. I don't want this area to be as colourful as the rest. Just want it to be quite muted tones. So my golden olive, tip a little bit of that out onto my plate. I'm using my brush to do that rather than actually, I'm saying tipping but not doing that, but I don't want to tip it because the whole pot might come out. So let's wipe that on there. Now I'm going to mix this wax with this pigment, and to do that I'm going to use my sponge today. Now you can do it with a palette knife, you can do it with your fingers, it's entirely up to you. But I'm going to use the sponge on the Easy 3D, so I may as well be loading it up while I'm mixing. With my sponge nice and flat, just get a little bit of that off there. Okay, with my sponge nice and flat, I'm ever so gently just skimming over the surface of that Easy 3D, just touching it. I'm hardly touching. Let me just change the camera again. So I'm going to move this so that hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Here's my sponge. I'm holding it flat on there and I am barely touching. Now to do this, I like the sponge because you've got that big flat surface and you've got something to hold on to. I am not pressing on here for this. I'm literally stroking it over. If I'm quiet for a minute, you can probably hear it. Go over a few times. And that will build up your colour. Nice and soft. Let it build gently. I'm going to put a little bit more onto my sponge. And I'm going to go down the sides here as well. Just gently go along the sides of your canvas if you want to. Now this way, I love the soft finish that you get. Let me just show you something. If you've left far too much of this on here and you get a big splodge like that, what are you going to do about it? You're going to take a damp sponge. I've just squeezed this clean sponge out in my water pot, and because it's water based, you can wipe it away. I love that. I love that safety, that I can't really go wrong. So then I can leave that to dry a bit. But while that's just drying off, over this side, just adding that gentle soft colour. Here we go. With what I've got here, I'm using my finger now, and I'm just mixing a little bit of that up with my finger, and I can go onto my flowers, just add a little bit of wax on there. I love the finish, to be honest. I don't need to do this bit, but I just like the finish and how it picks up, and the ease that you can add this, because it's at the end of your fingers. We're all used to using gilding waxes and the like with your fingers, so this seems almost quite natural, a natural way to apply wax. There we go. Adds a lovely finish. I've got a little bit more to do here. Try and find my sponge with the wax on, and then go over this now. This is dried nicely, and I can put my softer colour on there. Just spread it out a little bit. You notice I'm never worried about getting any of these products on my hands, because as they are water based and non-toxic, wash them off your skin easily, so I never worry about getting them on my hands. Here I want to get a little bit of that wax in there, and I'm not having much luck with my sponge, So I'm just going to use a bit with my brush. But be careful you don't overdo it if you're using a brush. It's easy to overload it and end up with too much. So just keep your sponge nice and flat. Keep your brush, sorry, not your sponge. Your brush nice and flat. Just press it in there and it'll just get a little bit of that colour onto that. Any little areas that you've not quite caught with your sponge, you can do it with this brush now. Right in underneath that edge of that fabric there. Just needs something adding to it. Okay, I've been on a long time today. That was quite a nice project to work on. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I'm going to go away now and carry on working on this other piece that I also started on the live, but last couple of weeks. On here, just quickly to run through, I've got my Easy 3D and fabric, ivory, Powertex, Easy Coat Mat and my rice paper. I used Vista to add colour, and if you remember last week I was saying that just the brown Vista, I felt it was lacking something, so I put some red Vista on and some green Vista, and then I decided it needed to be brighter still, so I've been adding some inks, some of the Powertex acrylic inks, and down the bottom here I've used a little bit of the metallic acrylic ink. I'm liking what it's doing, so I'm going to carry on working with that. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next week.